Second Lieutenant Josh Wongaman here again. We're going to cover three things today. We're going to talk about AT equipment. We're going to talk about using AT equipment or alpine touring equipment to go uphill. And we're going to talk about how to use alpine touring equipment to go downhill. For some familiarization, we're going to talk about some equipment you might be more familiar with just in the normal alpine ski. So for each of these sections, we're going to talk about the skis, we're going to talk about the boots, and we're going to talk about the skins. And the skins is a new thing for you probably. It's this item here, and we'll get into more depth on that. This is one thing that's not used in traditional alpine skiing at the resorts. It's only for alpine touring skiing. So let's talk about just a normal alpine ski. This is a normal alpine ski. The features of a ski: it has a tip, it has a tail, it's got this waxed base for sliding on, and it's got metal edges for control. And finally, it's got a binding which is bolted to the top, and this binding is what attaches the boot to the ski. So talking about boots next. Your normal alpine ski boot looks something like this. It's got a shell for your foot. This shell has a toe lug to attach to the ski and a heel lug to attach to the ski, and finally has the cuff, and this is the part that goes up your leg. Now, the way that this boot attaches to the ski is your toe lug slides into the toe of the binding, your heel lug goes back into this lever, and this lever on the heel of the binding goes over the heel lug and attaches the boot to the ski. It's how the ski is attached to you. And you'll notice this cuff has very little flexion, and that's because you want stiff cuff to get good control over the ski. Some boots have a walk mode. This is one that does. But this walk mode, you'll notice, is even with it engaged, there's not very much movement compared to it being disengaged or in ski mode. Not a lot of movement. Now, when we're doing this downhill skiing or alpine touring skiing, we're gonna have poles, but the poles aren't very different, so we're not gonna spend a lot of time talking, or any time talking about those. Next, we're gonna talk about a normal ski. This is an alpine touring ski setup. The ski is exactly the same. Tip, tail, sliding surface, metal edges, and that's true for all alpine touring skis. Now there's two types of binding that's used in alpine touring. The first is a frame binding. And this binding looks almost identical to the traditional binding that we talked about, and it is. The only difference is that there's these bars that connect the toe and the heel together, and what that allows for is when your boot is in the ski, you can unlock this lever at the back here, and that allows this binding to come off of the surface of the ski. And if we flip this lever over here, that stops the binding from locking back into place. And this allows you to walk with the ski attached to your foot and actually lift your heel up off the ground like you would when you're normally walking. So this is called a frame binding. It's pretty heavy. The ski's pretty heavy. It's hard to walk with uphill just because of its weight, but we at least have that efficiency of being able to lift the heel up. Now, a more commonly used binding for alpine touring is called a Pintec binding. You'll notice that the ski once again looks pretty much identical, but this binding is significantly lighter. You'll notice that unlike the frame binding, it doesn't have the bars in between the toe and the heel, which makes it much lighter than the frame binding. But you'll also notice that the attachment points for this binding are significantly different in that you've got pins here for the toes and these two pins down here to attach the heel of the boot to the ski. So let's look at what that boot would look like that would fit in a ski like this. Now this boot has a toe lug and a heel lug, which allows it to fit into the frame binding and even just a normal binding as well. But what makes this boot different is this walk mode gives us pretty significant cuff movement by comparison, 20 to 30 degrees. Now, I know that that amount of cuff movement doesn't look significant, but when used in conjunction with the fact that the heel is able to leave the surface of the ski for walking, you get a lot better range of motion, and you're able to walk around pretty easily with the skis and the boots, the alpine touring skis and boots. So the way that this boot attaches to this ski is there's these two lugs, or these two kind of metal pieces in the toe here, and those interact with the pins at the toe of the binding. And they're spring loaded, and you press down, and Now my boot is attached at the toe. The heel attaches with these two pins I showed you before in the similar way to a normal ski boot, in that you press down forcefully, and now the ski is attached to the boot. What you'll notice is with the ski attached like this, we're unable to lift our heel up, and so we can't walk in this mode. So to go to the walk mode, what we do is we rotate this binding around so that these pins pivot out of the way. And now our boot heel can sit back here and it won't be engaged with the heel of the binding at all. So once again, we attach our toes, which are spring loaded. And now we have this range of motion. We're able to lift the heel of the boot off of the ski and we're able to walk uphill. Now there's one thing that's holding us back from walking uphill, and that's the fact that this surface here has no traction. If we try to walk with the surface engaged with the snow, our ski is just going to slide all over the place, which is where the climbing skin comes in. This is a climbing skin. It's made of nylon. There's other synthetic versions that are either more or less slick. The original climbing skin that the 10th Mountain Division used was made of goat hair. So the pieces to the climbing skin include the tip loop, the tail loop, so that attaches to the tip of the ski and that to the tail. And there's two surfaces, this nylon surface with hairs on it, and they're directionalized so the ski can slide from tip to tail. But when the ski tries to go backward, or you try to push this hairs backward, they stand up and gain traction in the snow and give you purchase so that you can travel forward. The last surface is a glue surface here. So you'll notice when I pull it apart, the skin sticks to itself. This is to stick to the base of the ski, in addition with the tip and tail loop to hold the skin onto the ski. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm just going to use this ski here with the Pintec binding, and I'm going to use the skin and this Alpine touring boot to show you how to use this ski boot and skin to travel uphill and downhill. We'll start with uphill first. For the ski, all we need to do is we need to push these brakes out of the way and rotate this 90 degrees so that the pins are facing away from the boot or perpendicular to the boot, and our heel can just rest right in this notch and move freely. The boot we'll want to put into walk mode so this cuff can articulate freely or fairly freely. We want to change the latches so that they're pretty loose. The looser the latches, the more movement we're able to have in our boot and we can walk more freely. You take the boot, you're going to step into the binding and engage the pins on the toe. Now there's a locking lever up here, and when you're traveling uphill you want this locking lever in place so that your boot doesn't accidentally come out of the binding. The boot's made to come out of the binding in ski mode a little more easily, just so that you don't have any knee injuries or lower leg injuries. But when we're going uphill, we shouldn't be going at any high speeds, and that shouldn't be as big of an issue, so we lock the toe in. Now before we put our boot into the ski, what we need to do is attach our climbing skin to the ski. So we'd have our ski off to the side, we'd take our climbing skin and we'd detach the glued sides from one another. We'd take our tip loop and put it over the tip of the ski, push a little bit of that glue down, and then we'll pull the skin the rest of the way apart, kind of line up our skin so that the two metal edges of the ski are still showing, attach our tail loop, it just cams right over, and then press the glue of the skin into the base of the ski so it's firmly attached. And now that we've got the skin on, and our boots in the ski and in walk mode locked in, we're able to slide the ski forward, and then when we want to take a step forward, you'll notice that the hairs that are on this skin engage with the surface and help you to walk forward or walk uphill. And so that is how we're able to travel uphill with skis on while doing alpine touring. For the downhill, we don't want our skins on. So we're moving on to the downhill now. So step one is you're gonna take your ski off, and to do that, you're just pressing that lever, and that opens up the toe pieces, or the binding and the pins on the toe, so that you're able to take the ski off. And we wanna take the skin off the ski. And to do that, it's just reverse order. We flip that tail loop off. We rip the skin off of the bottom of the ski. Put the tail loop off. You push the ski off to the side for now. And to store our skin, we're going to put it glue to glue, just like it was before. And now we can fold it up. You see it folds up really small, and we can put it in a pack off to the side, and we can take it out later if we want to do another trip uphill. Now the binding, it was rotated 90 degrees out of the way, and so that the pins wouldn't engage with the heel of the boot. We're going to rotate that the rest of the 360 degrees again, back to where the pins are facing along or toward the tip of the ski, and that allows our boot to engage with the heel of the binding again. So step one is you attach your toes and put the boot into ski mode so that you have that cuff stiffness. Also, it makes it way easier to press the boot down into the heel of the binding. We're going to see if I don't break this table. Press firmly down so that the heel of the boot is now engaged with the pins, and we'll adjust the buckles on the boot so that we have increased stiffness and we have better control of the ski. And the buckles on the way uphill and the buckles on the way downhill, that's all personal preference. Some people like to ski with a looser boot, some people like to ski with a tighter boot, and that doesn't make a huge difference. The big thing is you want to make sure this lever's in ski mode though, because you definitely don't want all of the cuff flexion that this boot has when it's in walk mode. Finally, when we get to the bottom, it's safe to assume we probably want to take our ski off at some point in time. And unlike the traditional ski binding where we push this lever down and that releases the heel, this boot comes out at the toe. This lever is always how we're going to get the boot out of the ski. And so when we press it down, you'll notice that the toe of the boot is free, but the heel isn't. And you rotate your foot out to the side so that these pins disengage with the slots on the heel of the boot that they're meant to interact with. So to this point in time, we've covered the equipment, including the skis, the boots, and the skins that are needed for alpine touring skiing. We've talked about the uphill use, applying the skin to the ski, putting the boot in walk mode, and adjusting the binding to walk mode. And finally, the downhill, where we're going to put the binding back into the normal downhill ski mode, take our skins off our skis, and put our boot back into ski mode.